Next time I'm coming back as a dinosaur.
You can do that if you want to be a dinosaur. I don't think you'll like it.
Probably not.
Welcome, everybody, to Unraveling the Unexplained. I am Kat, longtime astral traveler and spirit consultant. This is my brother John, longtime fan of the creepy and paranormal.
Hello.
And he has picked out a video for me to watch and react to. I don't know what it is, and we are going to jump into it. But first, I'm super excited. We actually got a question from a comment on one of our videos. And this question, I'm not sure I'm supposed to shout out users, or I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm not really sure how that works. But the question was involving whether or not it's okay to continue contacting and working with a spirit when that spirit gave that person a sense of nausea, feeling sickness, and things like that. I do think it's a question that comes up sometimes. Is what I'm interacting with safe?
It's definitely a question I think I've asked you before, too.
Right. And there are a number of reasons why a sickness can come on from an interaction with a spirit that's not necessarily malevolence. It used to happen to me a lot when I was first learning how to work with my empathic abilities. So it's possible, like when I was in high school, I would walk around school and feel nauseous all day long, sick, and not know why. But really, it's because everybody there is miserable and angsty and not feeling well. And before I really understood how to use my psychic abilities, use my empathy, understood what it was I was picking up on, the body, the psyche picks up on that sensation of I'm not well mentally, I'm not doing good emotionally, and translates it into I don't feel well physically, in order to get the message across.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So sometimes if you're coming across, you're working with an entity or a spirit, somebody who's transitioned or passed on, and they're trying to tell you, I don't feel well, I'm not well, I'm not happy. It can come across as a physical illness if you're not picking up on it psychically, if you're not open to receiving the messages, communications through in a more verbal translation manner. It can sometimes translate in a physical sense. So just because we have a feeling of nausea or something like that that comes on doesn't necessarily mean you're working with something evil, doesn't necessarily mean that it has malicious intention. It can mean that you're translating an unhappy feeling of not well into a physical feeling of not well for yourself. That is something that can happen. That having been said, it's critical in situations where you're interested, feeling called to work with entities on the other side, to follow your own intuition. If the situation feels scary to you, if it doesn't feel comfortable to you, if you don't feel safe proceeding, I don't recommend proceeding. Once again, not because something may necessarily be evil, but if those are the feelings you're having, that entity, that spirit can pick up on the feelings you're having and absorb that energy for themselves. And we can see an escalation of the situation into unpleasant situations if that's the case.
Just continues to amplify the negativity.
Correct. So if that is scary feelings that you're having, uncomfortable feelings, follow your intuition and disengage from the situation. It's better for the spirit and for you, probably. Well, I'm excited. I like getting stories, questions from the public. If you guys have questions and things, leave them in the comments. Let us know. We're happy, I think, to comment on them in the beginning of the videos. And
yeah, most assuredly.
Yeah, sounds awesome to me. And with that having been said, let's jump into this.
Do you believe in reincarnation? The idea that a soul could be reborn into a new life? Because I'm going to tell you the incredible true story of the Pollock sisters. The Pollocks were your average family living in Hexham, England. They lived a quiet, ordinary life. John and Florence ran a milk delivery business, had 4 sons, and then welcomed 2 daughters. They were happy and life was good until tragedy struck them in their small town on the morning of Sunday, May 5th, 1957. The family was busy getting ready for church when the doorbell rang. It was the neighbor boy, Anthony. He wanted to see if Joanna and Jacqueline wanted to walk with him up to the church. As the 3 children walked hand in hand towards the church, a car turned onto the road, and as it neared the children, it veered into the opposite lane, jumped the curb, and hit them. 11-year-old Joanna, 6-year-old Jacqueline, and 9-year-old Anthony Layden were pinned between the car and a brick wall. Almost instantly, the 2 sisters were killed. Anthony died in the ambulance on his way to the hospital. The driver was a local woman named Marjorie Wynne, who never should have been behind the wheel. She was under the influence of a number of substances and took what she believed to be lethal quantities of aspirin and phenobarbital. In a twisted act of revenge, she had intentionally hit the 3 children after losing custody of her 2 daughters. She'd also planned to take her own life that day, but would be the only one to walk away from the accident. Devastated doesn't even describe the Pollock family, and how could it? 8 months later, Florence discovered she was pregnant. The family was overjoyed. For the first time since the accident, they could finally feel some of their grief lifted. Nearly a year and a half after losing Joanna and Jacqueline, Florence gave birth to twins, if you can believe it. And there was no history of twins in either John's or Florence's family. Throughout her whole pregnancy, even Florence's doctors had believed she was only carrying 1 child, and there was only ever 1 heartbeat heard. But against all odds, Florence gave birth to identical twin girls on October 4th, 1958. They were named Jillian and Jennifer. John and Florence noticed Jennifer had 2 birthmarks. One was a mark on her left hip, identical to a birthmark that Jacqueline had. It was so distinct because John and Florence had always said it looked like a thumbprint, and now Jennifer has one just like it and in the same spot. The other was a mark on her forehead, above her right eye, that was so similar to a scar Jacqueline had in the very same spot. Those weren't the only coincidences. When the twins were only a few months old, the family moved east to Whitley Bay, 30 miles away. As the girls got older, it became clear that Jillian and Jennifer seemed to remember Hexham, and in detail, despite not really having grown up there. Because they'd left when the twins were just a few months old, there was no way they could remember any of it. But they talked about it constantly, as if they'd grown up there. When the girls were 4, the family visited Hexham, and amazingly, the twins pointed out and even knew the names of landmarks they'd never seen before. They even knew the school that Joanna and Jacqueline attended. And get this, they knew how to get to Joanna and Jacqueline's favorite playground despite never having seen it. They could even identify old friends and neighbors. When the girls were a bit older, Jillian recalled experiencing visions of herself playing in a sandbox at a home in Wickham. And even though she'd never been there, she was able to describe the house and even the garden perfectly. Wickham was where the family had lived prior to moving to Hexham. Joanna was just a toddler. Florence and John even started to notice the twins had very similar personalities to their older sisters. The twins enjoyed the same games and foods as their older sisters. Now, after losing Joanna and Jacqueline, Florence had packed up the girls' toys and stored them away. She couldn't bring herself to get rid of them, so you can imagine Florence's shock when the twins started to ask for certain toys back. They even asked for them by name. It was as if the twins remembered the toys as their own.
When I got these 2 dolls out, one said, "Oh, that's Mary, and that's Susan." And it was exactly the same names as my other daughters had named them.
And as 4-year-olds, they didn't even fight over any of the toys. Jillian took Joanna's old toys, while Jennifer picked out Jacqueline's. They even knew which toys were gifts and which ones came from Santa Claus. In John's eyes, the evidence was beyond question.
Yeah.
Briefly, this is not reincarnation.
It's
interesting,
what would you
but it's not reincarnation. This is like a continuity flub. It's like a redo. My bet would be that the soul, the personality who hit the kids with the car, that soul went off the rails. That wasn't part of the life path. Okay, welcome. Is it the first time you've ever seen it happen?
Yeah, it's the first time.
Yeah. The spirit in the garage just knocked over something on the other side of the garage, and there is no one else in here.
Yeah, no.
It's the first time you've ever seen it.
Yeah, it's the first time I've seen that one.
It's okay.
Hi.
Yeah, hi is good enough. My bet is that soul went off the rails, went off the life path. That wasn't supposed to happen. That was yeah.
Bam, bad.
Look, free will is existential law. So there's nothing that says you have to do what you came here to do or whatever. And that meltdown, that was not supposed to be. Those girls, that was not a part of the path or whatever. This isn't a reincarnation. They didn't come back as a different person. They just came back. They just came back. They just jumped right back in, yeah. Someone
or something on the other side was like, okay, this was a whole flub up. Let's do what we can to kind of restart this.
They did. Yeah, they consulted with it and said, no, this is not what was supposed to happen. Let's just go back. Let's do it. Let's get right back in there. Which is not really a reincarnation. You literally came back as the same people.
Reincarnation is that you're a different person.
Yeah. We can at the end of the video we can talk a little bit more about the differences. Okay. But this is not reincarnation.
Okay.
Joanna and Jacqueline had been returned to them. Florence, on the other hand, refused to believe and dispelled any notion of it. A little bit of skepticism is healthy, right? And as a devout Catholic, she believed reincarnation wasn't something that occurred. Rather, we only have one life. But even she began to question things after hearing the twins talking about the accident. In the playroom one morning, Florence overheard the girls talking. She said what she saw that day haunted her. They were recreating the accident. Jennifer was lying on the floor, her arms and legs stretched out. Jillian was cradling Jennifer's head, saying, "The blood is coming out of your eyes. That's where the car hit you." What? No, I can't. Stranger yet was the twins' overwhelming fear of cars. And they'd often have recurring nightmares about being hit. Was it remnants of their old lives as Joanna and Jacqueline? And this went beyond the typical fear. One day, the girls were out with John and Florence when a nearby car in an alleyway had started its engine. The girls grabbed onto each other in pure terror, shouting, "The car is coming to get us!" As the twins turned 5, memories of their past lives slowly began fading away, but not before it was brought to the attention of U.S.-Canadian professor of psychiatry Ian Stevenson. He studied the twins from 1964 to 1985. At the time, he had already developed a reputation for his investigations into cases of reincarnation. He was studying things like paranormal experiences, telepathy, deathbed visions, poltergeists, near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, and children's memories of previous lives.
Let me show you and tell you briefly about one case. I'll give you a kind
charismatic.
of feel. This is a child of Lebanon. She's there about 18 months old, picking up the telephone and calling into it, "Layla, Layla, Layla." When she could speak more, she spoke about a previous life as a middle-aged married woman who had children, one of whom was called Leela. This deceased woman had died not long before our subject here was born. She actually happened to die in Richmond, Virginia. Here's the little girl when I first met her. Sorry the slide isn't better. And she's here between 6 and 7 years old, still speaking fluently about the previous life, still attached not only to the children of the deceased woman, but also to the husband of the deceased woman, whom she used to call 3 or 4 times a day to ask about how he is, his health, what was going on. Immensely jealous when he seemed to show some interest in a neighbor who had been a friend. Here she is at the age of about 25, as a young lady, still unmarried, still very attached to the husband of the deceased woman. And here's the deceased woman herself. This case illustrates not only the statements that these children make, but the behavior, the unusual behavior, the involvement with the other family.
Dr. Stevenson noted a recurring feature with the Pollock twins that he'd seen in his research on reincarnation many times before. Birthmarks or birth defects like those from the deceased person they are believed to have been reincarnated from. He referenced those 2 birthmarks on Jennifer. By 1985, the Pollock twins had stopped feeling a connection to any sense of a former life, and Professor Stevenson's studies came to an inconclusive end. What do you think? Were Joanna and Jacqueline reincarnated back into their family, or were Jillian and Jennifer absorbing their parents' unimaginable grief? I truly don't know what to think. It's possible they may have gotten information and details from their brothers, but it certainly doesn't explain everything. If you enjoyed today's video, give it a thumbs up, and hey, while you're at it, consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss out on the next investigation.
You bet. As always, we will link the channel and the video in the description box. Please give them a click, a like, a subscribe, support the original creators. They appreciate it, and so do we. The concept that reincarnation is an interesting topic because there are a ton of people that experience stuff like this or have noticed stuff like this. People who, and this, not only do you have, especially in young children who have memories of a previous life, but you also have many, many cases of adults who will experience their own death scenario in dreams that are pulling things through, the dreams that feel eerily real and like you're literally living someone else's life. Things like that come through a lot. So there's a couple of different things. Like I said in the middle of the video, this situation is less a reincarnation and more of a do-over or
A direct reset.
a reset, yeah, of a situation that sounds like it was an energetic flub up on the part of the woman who ran her car off the road. Those souls, those personalities in question just made the decision to just come right back and do another go. Go
Yeah.
ahead and continue the life path.
I mean, there was the boy as well that was there, and there's really no mention made of him.
No.
Does that mean that, like, in his case, it was a different scenario, or would he have also gotten the do-over? He just didn't talk about it?
It's not, okay, it's not a set of rules. Those girls didn't have to come back. And
But that's what I'm
neither did the little boy. Like,
Yeah.
it's...
Well, that's what I was asking.
It's not a set of rules. It's an individual. Whether or not we come here at all is always an individual decision on the part of the personality in question.
Okay, so it's like the two girls decided to go back, the boy didn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's not like a like some sort of bureaucratic checklist of nope, that was incorrect, return and try process again, but no, you're okay, you go on to the heaven place or whatever. It's all incarnation is an individual choice. And self, like the concept of self, is a much bigger, much more multifaceted thing than just the perspective that we have here focused in on corporeal reality. Like, think about it like you and your friends were playing VR Call of Duty or something, and there's this virtual sandbox reality that you all put your things on and go into play. Some people are your parents, some people are your friends, some people are the people that ran off the road and hit you with the car. And when you're in that, it's a fully immersive VR system. So you don't remember necessarily that that's what you're doing. The whole point is the experience of it being real. But the minute you get kicked back out of it and take the VR off, you're like, oh man, respawn. You know, that was not what was supposed to happen. I think we should just go respawn because there was something we were supposed to do that was important to the
Right.
soul of the mom or the soul of the father. There was a reason that we were born, and so we're just going to respawn because we need to be there to do this thing.
All right.
In other cases, like the little boy, he might have been like, well, that was a short round.
Right.
Different regenerate a new character. Do you know what I mean?
Different players, different approaches.
Right, exactly. You see, this is a helpful analogy because I think it helps it make more sense. Everything feels super heavy and rules oriented and rules based when you're here in the VR because it's a fully immersive experience. But when you're on the other side, it's like you took the VR headset off and you're like, oh, respawn, or
Gotcha.
time to build a new character, or time to be in a different scenario.
Okay, makes sense. So,
and as far as having the bleed throughs that can happen, it can be one of two things, okay? You can be getting bleed through. Think of it like you have your inventory menu options. Like you still have your XP points from the last time you played, basically.
Right.
So you may be able to equip weapons that you already have in your inventory, or, you know what I mean? There's still a connection to the collective experience that the personality has had. So some of that may bleed through. It's especially prevalent in young children. Like, the closer you are to having emerged into it, the more you have a memory of it.
Right.
And a lot of little kids say a lot of we always write it off as little kids say weird things. But they retain some of that memory for a time after they're born. Giovanni used to talk about the place behind the sun where we all come from, and that's where we're all going back to. And he remembers it.
Yeah.
And that was, 2-3 years old, he used to talk about stuff like that. So there is a part of that memory that's retained when you're young. And it fades over time. As an adult, you just become more integrated with the system that you're interacting with here, and that type
all of this becomes a bit more of your focus.
Right, correct. It is like having the blinders up so that you can be hyper-focused in physical reality with what you're doing, but you are in no way ever actually disconnected from the rest of self. from that inner self that's the one playing the game, and from all the other memories of that self or the other experiences that you've had. You're not disconnected from it. It's just that you have the headset on. You've got the blinders on so you can focus on what you're doing in this lifetime. But there can absolutely be bleed through.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing that can happen that people sometimes mistake as reincarnation or as memories from previous lives is there is also, when interacting with a spirit or an entity, somebody who's crossed over, there's a thing that can happen. I kind of call it, you know how you have like remote viewing and astral travel and stuff like that. This is more like embodiment travel. And what can happen is, especially for in a dream state, but it happens sometimes to me in a waking state, is if you come into contact with that entity or that spirit and they're trying to show you something, you can actually end up embodying that experience.
All right, what do you mean by that exactly?
It's like you're experiencing it yourself. So I have been
It would be like a hyper-realistic dream of a particular past scenario, or...
Correct. But okay, so remote viewing would be like if I'm meditating and suddenly I get images of like what I'm watching something happen. I'm seeing a scenario, right? Or I'm seeing something happening somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's like watching it on a screen, basically. Astral projection would be like, I went there. So I'm there, I'm in the room, experiencing what's happening. Embodiment projection would be as if I'm the person it's happening to. So I am experiencing this death as if I'm the person that it's happening to.
So it's like that one dream Dad told us about of him being a soldier or something.
Yes, correct. Yeah. And I've had it happen on multiple occasions, especially with, confusing or traumatic death scenarios. Like, I've been sitting on the couch here in the living room just watching TV, and suddenly I was laying, face down on the floor in shag carpet in a hotel room in 1973. And I'm getting, the bad man is coming back, and I can't move. And it was like, this spirit is already passed, right? Like, you have to let this scenario go to move on. But that can sometimes happen. It can come through in dreams for people sometimes as you're experiencing what that person experienced. And just like getting the nausea, it's another kind of translation of the communication. A spirit is trying to communicate what happened. And because different people receive in different ways depending on what they're open to, it translates in different ways. Some people receive that information by experiencing it in a dreamlike state.
Okay.
But then, because they experienced it, they start thinking that maybe that was their past life. It's not always the case that it's a past life. Sometimes it's a communication coming through.
It's just being kind of interpreted as a set of events.
Right. So, what I'm saying is it's difficult to determine just from the brief information that was there, like, the little girl who's on the phone, like, Layla, was that the little girl's past life? Or because that woman passed on and the little girl, young people are also a very open receiver, was the little girl receiving information from that spirit and was just embodying it because as a child not knowing how to translate into something else. So that's also possible.
Okay, makes sense.
But is reincarnation a thing? Yeah. You can come back and do it again. You can generate as many characters as you want. Come back and do it as many times as you like. And it's interesting, like, many people don't find that comforting.
I mean, I guess everybody's going to have their own reaction interpretation of things. I'm fine with the idea. I mean, I'm curious whether or not temporarily, like, if we're not restricted, like, if, I die, I could come back, but, you know what, I'd rather come back during the, 1800s or something.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Time is only linear because we're in this dense physical form. We're in a linear experience. From the other side, you don't have to, how do I say this well? to call them past lives or future lives is really...
It's just we use that as a ordering system here in this space. But,
yeah, it's kind of a misnomer.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that time isn't real. It's just not real in the way that we perceive it. There is a progression of events, or a progression of happening, a progression of creation. But you don't necessarily, from the other side's perspective, from that perspective, you don't necessarily have to experience it in a linear format.
Next time I'm coming back as a dinosaur.
You can do that if you want to be a dinosaur. I don't think you'll like it.
Probably not.
But feel free.
But I mean, apparently at some point dinosaurs had to be very popular because there were a lot of them.
I have theories about that. No real answers, but if you want to get into it, we can.
That sounds like a totally fascinating video for another
That's
time.
a totally different video. I have theories about that. I have never experienced a dinosaur spirit. I think it would be awesome.
Apparently there were a lot of dinosaurs at one point.
Right.
And that was just the thing to be during that.
Like I said, I keep bumping the microphone. I have theories about that. No
Okay.
concrete evidence, but theories.
We'll find another time with another.
Let us
video
know
to
if
maybe
you
bring
want to
that
know
one up.
theories about dinosaur spirits. I will get into it.
I'm fascinated.
Also let us know in the comments if you have experiences that you would like to have us answer questions on for you. We're happy to do that. Like, subscribe, share, all of that fun stuff. And we will see you next time on Unraveling the Unexplained.
Have a good evening, folks.